All right, everyone. I usually just screw around in the beginning, but we don't have time to screw around. We don't, because I don't know how it happened. I don't know why it happened. One, the only New York Giants legend, New York Giants broadcaster, also on the Believe Network with the venerable Bob Papa. The one, the only, Mr. Carl Banks.
What's going on, Tim?
I was like, wait a minute, is he going to say something? Because he's pausing. Was it a say
What's
sore?
How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Hey, you said you didn't know how it happened. Well, you just reached out, and I was like, let's do it. But, we were we discussed it, but I was like, let's get some camp under our belt so we can have some real good stuff to talk about because, the off season was filled with a lot of, just unhappiness. And now that hope floats again, we got some things to talk about.
Hope floats. Not a bad movie either. But yes, I've been at camp probably most of the open camp days. And it's been one of those things that I've been a Giant fan since 76. So I've seen the good, I've seen the bad. I was there when they opened the stadium and known as the Meadowlands in 76 with that loss to the Dallas Cowboys. I'm never going to forget that. We've been through a desert. I always talk about the Andy Robustelli years, and no one really understands, because there's a lot of younger people on YouTube. They don't understand Andy Robustelli and how the Giants were in the 70s and how I was trying to compare it to what it is now. But there's a different, you've been at camp. There seems that, I hate the word aura because it's always being thrown around, but there is a different vibe, I think, this year at Giant camp. I don't know if that's going to equate to wins, but there is a different feeling that that I feel that when you're out there, not only with the players, but the fans. And is it maybe there's just additional talent on this team, that there's more hope even with our schedule?
Yeah, so I think the one thing that is noticeable is that the talent is better. They have better talent on the roster. I don't know if it's going, what the record's going to be. We can't predict that because, the schedule on paper is never the same the week you play, other than the first week of the season, because injuries happen, all kinds of things happen. So teams are different by the time you play them. But the feeling around the Giants, and you, like you said, you've been around the team since the 70s, so you know the difference between 83 and 84.
3-12 and 1, 9-7 in the playoffs. Phil Simms' first 4,000-yard season for the New York Giants.
Correct. So that 83 draft, they got some good players, right? They got Terry Kennard and a few other guys, Perry Williams, Leonard Marshall. And then 84 was even the next upgrade. That was my class with myself, Gary Reasons, Hostetler, William Roberts. We had, Elvis Patterson. We had a good group. So you went from that 3-12-1, which parallels 2024-25 Giants, right? And then they had that offseason leading into that year. There was Tyler Nubin, with the corner, what's his name? Drew Phillips, Malik Neighbors. So you got some key players, right? And then they follow it up this year with another good draft. And so I'm hoping that the results will mirror exactly what the results were or better when the same scenario happened when I was drafted, because Bill Parcells was on the hot seat too, right? And he told us, he's like, if we don't win this year, they're going to fire my ass. And that was, I don't know if you knew the origins of the Parcells guys, right? You've heard of, he's a Parcells guy,
right?
That originated in training camp. We're getting ready for the first cut, and Bill got the team together after practice on the field, and it's probably the first and only time I've seen him as vulnerable as he was, but he says to us, listen, they're going to fire my ass if we don't win. And he says, we're going to get rid of some guys that you may like, but I just want you to know that once we have this roster set, I'm going to give you everything I got. And I just need you guys to give me everything you got. And we'll be in this together, and you'll be my guys and I'll be your guy. And that was the origin of the Parcels guy thing. And, you know, after that, we just went on, you know, we got things turned around, and it was great. You know, we got, well, Sean Landetta was on that team, and Maurice Carthon was on the team. Those were both USFL editions. So, it was fun. And I just hope for the Giants that can mirror 83, 84, and, you know, 25, 26 or 24, 25.
You also had Bart Oates from the USFL on at that time.
That's right. That's right.
85, though. We're not going to talk about the whiff in the end zone in the playoffs in Chicago when you brought up Sean Landetta. I was going to try to stay away from that because that is still a
you know what, though?
Painful childhood memory.
There were a lot of people that, you know, they had these conspiracy theories about, you know, Sean threw the game, or, you know, he was out late that night, and that's why. But I can tell, because I was on the field. I was one of the protectors on the wings, and the wind was blowing that much. I mean, it was a very strong wind. If anybody's been to Soldier Field in the wintertime, the wind is not unpredictable like the old Giants Stadium. It's predictable. When it's blowing in a certain direction, it's gusting. And, you know, just that, what was it, like 18-inch drop from his hand to his foot? The ball moved just slightly, and he missed it.
Well, you could literally see it. I mean, you couldn't see it at the time, but, you know, you watch it on YouTube. You could see the shift in the ball. Literally, when he dropped it out of his hand, it literally went like 3 inches to the left. And
you know, the thing about that wind, and Johnny Parker, our weight coach at the time, when I talk about how strong the wind was in Soldier Field, he's standing on our sideline and the wind is blowing in his face. He's backed up to one of the heaters. His pants are on fire and he doesn't even know it. That's just how cold. We had to pull him away. He had like the blowers on the sideline that were blowing flame. He was standing right there in front of it, and his whole back of his pants were on fire. And he just, because all he could feel was the cold coming into his face. We used to tease him about that after that, but that's just how cold it was. One of the coldest games I've ever been in.
We like I said, we have a different team this year, and you've watched Malik Neighbors in camp, and last year he seemed to play on a different level than some of the Giants receivers. I was concerned about his yards after the catch. Oh no, there we go. His yards after the catch weren't there until after I should say during the Indianapolis game. But this year he seems to be, with Russell Wilson, having a different type of connection, having the ball placed in, you know, I'm not going to say the proper placement, but you kind of want to say that, where he's allowed to accelerate after the ball. He's being hit in stride. And this camp, he seems to be playing on a different level, even than last year. A lot of times you'll have that sophomore slump between year 1 and 2 because the league adjusts and you have to adjust with the league. But is he, I mean, like I said, I've told people this, but from your perspective, is he that, I mean, has he really turned the corner where he went from really good to being maybe a top 3 or top 5 wide receiver in the league?
I think before it's all said and done this season, he will be. It's his competitive drive. It's the subtleties of the position that he's mastered and made his own. But I think his competitive drive is the thing that's going to push him into the elite 5 of this league. But his skill set is something special, man. It's like Bob and I did a film breakdown of the receivers, right? And what coaches are teaching, he takes and makes it his own. If that makes any sense. Like if you're running a back shoulder fade or something like that, the way he sets it up is totally different. And you can tell they're all being coached the same way, because if you look at Hyatt, Robinson, All of them. They all do kind of the same thing. You can tell they're trying to follow their coaching points. With him, he gets open and he achieves it. It's just the most amazing thing, though, because he is just it's a different style of player. He's such an elite player, but that's kind of the LSU thing for the last, I don't know how long, since Odell Beckham. They've always had elite wide receivers, and they just are playing at a different level than the game, if you will.
You mentioned Odell Beckham, and I think that's the comparison that most Giant fans go to. I think the rookie seasons are comparable, but I think Odell did some things, especially having, being limited with the hamstring early on. But he did some things that I think were next level already, and I kind of think Malik's already heading that way. But if you have another wide receiver in camp that we were high on this channel, which was Jalin Hyatt when he came out of Tennessee, we didn't really think he was a product of Hendon Hooker because you saw what he did when Hendon Hooker went down and Joe Milton came in. I was very excited when the Giants got him. I thought if they got him in the second round, or even, I thought that would have been a steal, but of course they go down a little bit and get him in the third. But he hasn't produced. I've noticed in camp, though, and one of the things that we have pointed out a couple times here is he seems to have a difficult time at times getting off the ball and into his routes. I always thought he was going to be more of a Devontae Smith type player who uses his speed and his quickness. And I filmed a bunch of stuff the other day where actually you could see him working after camp with with a defensive back, actually doing that, actually trying to get off the ball and into his routes. How would you say his camp is going? Because, he's one Giant that this is probably a make or break year for him.
Well, I don't think we've seen the best of him. I think he's a kid that just didn't, for whatever the reasons are, didn't get the opportunities. So he's really still just developing, where he should be more polished, but he just didn't get a lot of opportunities. Now he's getting them. I would like to believe that he's going to factor in to their plans, because you have, Mr. Moonball himself back there at quarterback, and he likes to drive the ball down the field. And he is a pure catcher of the football, but he is unpolished at his releases. But the beautiful part about camp is that this is where you work on it, because you can always game plan him open if you need a go route. He had a beautiful post corner 2 days ago, and Russ kind of threw it into a team meeting with Malik Neighbors, where if you'd have saw this route that he ran, it was a thing of beauty. He was all alone in the end zone. He twisted the corner up. So he's coming. He's going to factor in because of his speed, right? And it becomes an issue where matchups can be a problem for defenses, especially when you have to give Malik Neighbors attention. And even when you give him attention, he can still catch the ball. You've got a guy like Hyatt who can just literally take the top off if you can scheme it for him, or as he continues to work on his release. But keep in mind, he's not going to get the best defensive back. The opponent's going to give their best players to Malik Neighbors. So he has to work on, beating the second tier guy, if you will.
That's kind of what we're hoping that we're going to see this year. Tyrone Tracy came in last year. I don't want to say he was a surprise. He was a former wide receiver, played limited time at running back, came in, had a little bit of the fumbleitis in the beginning, kind of worked towards that at the end. You go out and you bring in Cam Scatteraboo, who seems to, who is a camp favorite, been a fan camp favorite. Big time. Of course, he's now has the hamstring issue. You also have Devin Singletary coming in. Do you see the Giants offense, even with Russell Wilson, going more towards a run-centric offense and with, utilizing more play action, you're already smiling. So.
To answer your question, yes, but it's not like you think.
Okay.
Remember, Russell Wilson is a runner. He's going to factor into that style of offense. And I guess this was a conversation I was having with Coach Coughlin, and you'll remember this too, they optioned the Giant when Russ was in Seattle. They ran the option, I don't know how many times, and they just demoralized the Giants.
Oh yeah.
And Coach Coughlin, he and I were standing on the sidelines, and he says, you know, they gotta use him as a runner. He's a runner. And he said, he killed us. He said, we had no answer for the option. They ran it with him, and they didn't. It was JPP and I think Kiwanuka. Neither one of the guys could get anything done. It was a sight to see the way they deployed that. But they're going to have, in my opinion, and I know they're going to use Russ in some capacity on the move, right? RPO or whatever. But they're going to have so many different options. They can be a power scheme. They're a gap and trap team. I saw that, Carmen Basilio, when we were watching a couple of days, the first day in pads, it was gap and trap, and holes were opening wide open, right? They trap, or they would double team the nose guard, trap the tackle, and away they went. So it's they've got a scheme that I think is going to be versatile enough, but you can't have the success that Tyrone Tracy had and think that you're going to revert back to just a passing. And Brian Daboll has never been known to run the football.
No, if you look at his teams in Buffalo, no. And with Giants too.
Right. It was one of those things where if he had to, he would. But if he didn't have to, he'd pass it. But I think the balance also of having Mike Kafka involved in the schematics of the offense probably is why we see more running. And then you don't draft Cam Scatterbo to make him a receiver, right? Like, I think when you had Devin Singletary, the thought process may have been he's an accessory to the pass game, meaning, well, he's a good runner. We'll use him. Nothing flashy. He'll get us first downs. Then in comes Tracy, and it looks a little different, right? And now it's like, okay, well, we just can't. And plus, they didn't have the luxury anyway of having a lot of options with the way the offensive line was. So they had to get what they could get. They couldn't drive the ball down the field last year because they couldn't protect the quarterback. So you kind of needed to run to set up the pass game in any capacity last year. So teams will have a lot to plan for because the Giants can legitimately run the ball. You're going to have to run the football in the NFC East. We don't have the winners like we used to, but the inclement weather in the Northeast is still inclement. It's wind, it's rain, it's some snow. And so you've got to be able to run the football. And I think that is, if you want to see exhibit A of that, you take a look at what Philadelphia did with Barkley. You know, they used Barkley. He carried the load and took the burden off the quarterback.
I'm going to get to the chat, everyone, so don't worry. We're going to get some questions to Carl. I also want to thank Big Don for dropping in the OG memberships. So everyone give thanks to Big Don over in Texas as well. You were a player, of course, back in the 80s and the 90s. You remember two-a-days. You remember full contact. You remember being in the pads. You know, with the way the league has gone with training camp. I remember in college, two-a-days as well. I remember going to Albany watching two-a-days. I remember the morning practice, the evening practice. And now we've kind of shifted away from that, I think, more towards the fact that we're protecting the players or trying to help. You know, the NFL average career is like 3.5 years. But is there a detriment with the fact that you've shortened the preseason and you've kind of shortened the ability to really see what you have in reference to going full contact, to seeing, you know, what a player can do? Is it a detriment now, or is it more beneficial that we're not having the extended preseason and we're not allowing full contacts as much as they did? I always go back, because when I worked in Tampa under John Gruden, I remember going, you know, I remember in 2003, you know, sitting out there in the tents and 10 o'clock in the morning, then going back and 6 o'clock in the evening, you know, thinking how these guys doing this. But now you've gotten away from that. You've gotten away for, it's more of, you know, I'm not going to say choreograph, but are you losing a teaching moment or are you losing the ability to evaluate talent when you don't have as much time with the pads?
I would normally say yes under the construct that I played in, but right now everybody has the same rules, right? So nobody's, every team in the league has to evaluate based on the format that they are working under. You just have to find a way to create competitions. And, some teams went with inter-squad scrimmages, right? That was kind of their extra preseason game, and it was kind of their way to see their players against competition. But, that we see bad tackling for the first month of the season.
Yeah.
Some teams are more physical. In camp, they, kind of script in physical things. Other teams are like, I just want to get healthy. I just want to stay healthy. I think we'll hit our stride, at the time we're supposed to hit our stride if we're healthy. I do have a theory, though, why we are where we are, aside from the quote unquote safety. The other part of that defined print, in my opinion, is yes, the game is safety, and they every Super Bowl they tout these stats, right? I think that's all to get an extra game in the next year.
Oh yeah, we're going USFL 18 games.
Yeah, I think they're going to go 18 because it's if they get enough data to say, look, concussions are down and serious injuries are down, and the players have more time off. Then they're going to like, okay, 18 games. Networks give us more money. But I think the teams that can create physicality in camp through whatever the drills are, so that your players' bodies are, calloused enough so when the whistles blow the first time, you're ready to go, right? And you're not missing tackles or afraid to take contact. You have to figure out how to get that done. And that was the one thing I noticed the first day in pads for the Giants. The offense whooped the defense butt.
Yeah.
And I said that, you can't be the defense that you say you are if you're not setting the tone. Like great defenses, and you've been around, you were in Tampa, right? Yep. Great defenses, when they get those pads on for the first time, they're trying to wreck practice.
You could
coach
see
is blowing the whistle and saying, hey, I'm trying to get something done with my offense. Right? Because you set the tone. If you're the great defense that you say you want to be, you can't wait. You can't wait for, the offense to punch you in the mouth before you say, okay, let's go. It's too late then. Great defenses are always setting the tone. They play on their terms, and it's not negotiable, right? But when I saw that, I was like, okay, there's a next step this team, mentality-wise, defensively, will have to get to, because we're all marveling at the film clips of, there's a pass rush, and it's been beautiful to watch. But how do you earn the right to rush the passer, right? You got to stop the run. And Cam Scatterboo had a highlight reel the first day in pads.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're a top defense, he has that highlight reel against the second teamers. He's not running through your first team. He would never run through my first team. We would smack him up a little bit, and we wouldn't demoralize him, but he wasn't going to just be running through us like he did with the Giants that first day. Now they've gotten better and a lot more aggressive these last few days in pads, but it was just kind of, for me, I'm like, okay, guys, you're not there. You're not there yet. You can feel good about yourself all you want. You just got punched in the face by the offense, and you didn't have an answer for it until the next day.
We had a comment I just saw, because we've talked about this on the channel, the shoulder tackle that you seem to see prevalent now. in the NFL at times, where someone, where you're basically just throwing your shoulder into someone, trying to knock them off their stride and, put them down to the ground. I met you in '87 in Pasadena a couple days before the Super Bowl. And actually you gave me advice because I told you I was, I was high school linebacker / safety, and you gave me advice on tackling. I thought, to this day, I still usually tell people that advice. And it's different because you see the difference in tackling between the 80s and the 90s and kind of when you got into the 2000s, that I don't think that it's not proper. Maybe it's not proper technique being taught at the lower levels, but you see a lot of this. And the Giants were, they were culpable of it last year as well. You saw a lot. Trey Hawkins got hurt on a shoulder tackle. I mean, you saw that happen. Is this just something that's not being fully taught at the lower levels, that how to, basically how to tackle properly? And we're kind of seeing that when you get to the level that you need to now kind of be retaught what you've already learned.
Yeah, I can assure you, just based on what I see in my years watching players come into professional football camps, and then even looking at some of the stuff in college football, it's not being taught. And it's not a difficult thing to teach. But I learned it at age 8, 9 years old, and it was in walkthroughs. Right. Our coach would drill us on head placement, how to wrap up, and if we're going to use our shoulders, use our arms also to wrap the guy up.
Around. Yep.
And it's the weirdest thing when I see guys just diving in with their shoulders. Just take an extra step and wrap the guy up. The shoulder pads are there for a reason. Use them to your advantage. Don't dislocate your shoulder just throwing it in there. Just bring everything with you, and you'll make the tackle. But you just have to emphasize these things. And, coaches say, yeah, well, we practice this thing 1,000 times and we're rolling the lifesaver down and they're tackling it. But again, you've got to simulate contact in practice.
Well, and that was, it was funny because that's literally what you told me. You told me, don't lead with your head, lead with your shoulder, wrap up and drive. And I was, then I was probably 16. I'm like, oh, okay, I can do that. So then, I go tell everyone, Carl Banks told me to do this. Didn't help me because I wasn't that great of a talent. But it's just one of those things. Someone said Bill Parcells always valued the linebacker position. That's always from Hurst for Real. And we've talked about that. And I want to talk about the Giants linebackers for a second. But in like 86, you guys averaged anywhere between like 6'3", 6'4", 250. I mean, even your backups, like with Robbie Jones, was 6'3", Andy Hedden. You had these guys out there that were, what back in the 80s we see them as prototypical linebackers. You take a look at the way the linebacker position is now, especially with the Giants. You have 3 guys on the team right now, in Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns, and Abdul Carter, which in my opinion all have the similar skill set. They all seem to be very proficient, or we don't know with Abdul yet. He's shown flashes in camp, but they seem to be proficient at times at getting to the quarterback. But there seems to be a deficiency at times in their ability to set the edge and hold against the run. I mean, the Giants were 28th last year in yards given up. We gave up over 2,000 yards. It's always seemed to be the way. If you're going to beat the Giants, go off tackle, go up the middle, then go over the top. I said it. Joe Judge's last year in Cleveland was almost a blueprint about how to beat the Giants during that joint practice, because they just ran all over us. And at times, we haven't fully gotten away from that from Wink and Shane Bowen. With the Giants' current linebacking situation, in your opinion, because you are one of the greatest Giant linebackers that we've ever had, how would you evaluate what you think they're going to do with the big 3 and the likes of Bobby Okereke, McFadden, and maybe whomever else is going to be, starting or in the rotation for the linebacking core?
So you're not wrong in the way teams attack the edge. They don't want to attack the middle of the defense because Dexter Lawrence is there. Right. So in my opinion, it's mandatory that you know how to set the edge. I could fix it in 5 minutes, literally, because they're too athletic and they're too long.
You're at camp every day.
Yeah, I stay where I'm supposed to be.
Go fix it. All right, I'll go down and fix it.
I whisper to Kayvon every once in a while, but it is the easiest thing to do when you have guys that long. Like Brian Burns has got long arms. Kayvon Thibodeau, long arms. You have the athleticism, and I don't know how long Abdul Carter's arms are, but he's a long player. They're all long, tall players. The easiest way to set the edge is to set the edge. And when I say that is line up. Line up. If you're responsible for contain, line up in that. Let the blocker come to you. If you're head up with a blocker, he's gonna reach you right away. And then it's a tug of war, right? And then you're fighting against your own strength. Right? It's a game of leverage. And I learned it from Jack Ham. He's the one who taught me how to play the position with the proper leverage and understanding if you have to be somewhere and you have a chance to get a head start, why not? Why not line up in it? That way the blocker sees you and he's got to work harder to get you blocked because you're already lined up shade outside. So now he's got to try to reach out to you. And you just extend and you set the edge that way. But it's, I try not to
meddle.
Be their coach. Yeah. I'm an observer. I'm there for the guys if they need me. And you talked about tackling and I don't know if you remember, we had a game where Micah McFadden probably could have had 25 tackles, but he missed 15, right? And it was in the Arizona game. We're on the road, and I saw him, and he looked really down because we stayed out there for the week. And I pulled him aside, and I said, listen, you don't have a problem tackling. You have a problem with your technique. You find the ball. He's where he's supposed to be. So I'm like, that's not your issue. You just have to perfect your technique. And what I told him was take one extra step. He'd get there and then he'd lunge like he's jumping off a diving board. I was like, nope, take one extra step and wrap the guy up. You'll never miss a tackle. And he became a better tackler as a result of that. But, a lot of these guys get to the point of attack and then they just kind of lunge with both feet. And I'm like, no, take an extra step, use your pads, and wrap the guy up. It's easy. And the hit is bigger, too. If you step into it, the hit is much bigger because you get all of your shoulder pads on the guy and a little bit of the side of your helmet into him, and that drives him back.
We are familiar with that game because I always tell people about a game I had in college where I had 19 tackles, but I missed 12. And I said, everyone wanted to talk about the 19 tackles. No one wanted to talk about everyone wanted to talk about the 12. But you talk about tackling, and we have Abdul Carter, who we took 3rd overall, of course. I think Abdul is a talented player. A lot of people, I'm not going to paint with a broad brush, but a lot of people Giant fans want to compare him to Parsons, but I think they're two totally different players. His first 2 seasons at Penn State, he was an off-the-ball linebacker. His second season, there's always a stat that we use that it's 25.8. And that was actually Abdul Carter's missed tackle percentage his last season as a starter at Penn State as an off-the-ball linebacker. Then he was shifted not only out of necessity because Penn State lost 2 players to the draft, but because of the fact that Penn State wanted to take advantage of his speed. And everyone now that he's come with the Giants, a lot of Giant fans, they want to see him being used in multiple sets. They want to see him placed in that linebacker position. I have some concerns watching as many Penn State games as I have, and we have a lot of Penn State fans and alums. And we had Jerry Olowski, the former Bills offensive lineman, on a couple of weeks back. And he's a huge Penn State fan as well. And he was saying the same thing. I don't want to see him as an off-the-ball linebacker. I don't want to see him in a linebacker. I want to see what he does well, which is rush the passer. Do you think that Abdul, from what you've seen in the limited camp, and we haven't gotten to the first game in Buffalo yet, but do you think that he can be more than, I'm not going to say a situational pass rusher, but more than a pass rusher and maybe a little bit more into that linebacker mold, even though
he's a linebacker?
You would consider him to be a linebacker. Okay.
He's a linebacker. So, you had, 25, what was that number again?
25.9.
That's the let's say 26 missed tackles his senior year, right?
That was his missed
How many
tackle
games did it? Right. So 25% of the missed tackles. So
Right.
what is he? 1 out of 5 he misses?
Right. About 1 out of 5.
1 out of 5 tackles he misses. I take the 4 and correct the 1.
Okay.
If he was 35, 45% missed tackle rate, then he's a bad tackler. If you're missing 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 tackles a game, or every block, it's fixable. I think that's fixable. I'm a guy who I want guys to be 98, 99%.
Right.
Right. Because I think that's where I was, and it wasn't that hard to do. Because if you can get to the ball, you should be able to make the tackle. Right. And he has no problem getting to the ball. He's got great instincts. Right. So when people say, well, they like to see him rush the passer, you can't rush the passer until you can stop the run. You'll never have the opportunities, because guess what? 3rd and 3s don't get that. It's a disadvantage to your pass rusher. 3rd and 3s, they don't have to hold the ball long at all. So you want to be able to create a deficit play on 1st or 2nd down. It's got to be a negative or a no gain play so that you can get to a 3rd and 7 or 3rd and 8. If not, none of these guys are going to be any good as pass rushers, because they won't be able to get to the passer. And if you really want to see a dominant pass rush, you'll see a dominant run stop team, because they want to get in those long yardage situations as much as possible. And they know in order to get that, you've got to stop the run the majority of the time. But I like Abdul Carter. He's very instinctive. I think the fact that he does play off ball gives them the versatility for him to line up, and you can still have Burns and Thibodeau on the field at the same time. And he's a blitzer. You can use him as a run blitzer. You can use him as, in a true pass rush situation, a non-edge rusher, but he can run a game with an edge, right? He can run an in tackle twist. So there are so many different things they can do with him off the ball. And it's similar, though they're not the same player, but you see Micah Parsons, how he moves around and he just factors into the pass rush from off the ball, not just lined up. That's how Carter can be. And, Parsons Carter like Parsons, or Parsons like Carter, he was an off the ball linebacker before he was an on the ball linebacker. But the difference was, everyone thought that Micah Parsons was a better inside linebacker than a pass rusher coming out of college, because he was really good off the ball. But I think if I am Shane Bowen, all I want from Abdul Carter is to make sure he understands the grasp of the entire defense, what everybody does up front. Because of his skill set, he can be interchangeable at a lot of positions. But if they slot him into, you're just a go forward guy, and you don't know what your run responsibilities are, or you don't know if you move inside what the blocking schemes may be, then he will be a part-time guy. He'll be only a guy that you can put in certain situations, and that's a disadvantage. I don't see him as a guy, just in my conversations with him, I don't see him as a guy that can't handle a lot. I think he's because he's so instinctive. If you kind of give him the framework, he knows how things work. So I think if they can get it all together, and I keep saying I believe that Shane Bowen is competent, and I think they're doing a good job right now. He's got a healthy group. He seems to be super energized, meaning the defensive coordinator. But I wouldn't worry too much about Abdul Carter and how they use him. If he's missing 1 out of 5 tackles, we can fix the 1. If he's only making one tackle out of 5, then we got an issue.
Then we got a problem. I don't know how much time we have you for, but I want to bring a couple people on that are
sure.
big
Go ahead. I'm here with you.
I have a question that, and people, I always love when people say, well, don't ask that question. I'm going to ask a question anyways. You have been, I'm not going to say accused, but you have been told by certain segments of the fan base that you're a giant homer, that everything, all the information that you give out is usually from the slanted giant perspective. And I've mentioned to people that you kind of look at the whole totality of what you're saying, because if you come on like you came on today, everything you've said is factual. And just like this channel, they say we're giant haters at time because we try to just point out facts. When you're also the radio voice of the Giants with Bob Papa. So when you are, I know it bugs me sometimes when people say, well, you're just being hateful. And I'm like, no, I'm just pointing out both sides of the story. When you hear these things and you're giving both sides and both perspectives, does that tick you off at all?
No, and I can tell you why it doesn't. Because I was raised as a Giant in a environment of accountability, right? So I only see the game as holding my teammates, myself accountable. So the lens that I look through, though, yes, if you want to call me a Giant homer, I ain't rooting for nobody else. I can tell you that, right? But you have to know me and to know the type of player and to know why we were champions, why we were dominant. I don't settle for mediocrity, So if I'm criticizing somebody, you need to know that it's for a reason. If I'm not being as hard on somebody, but I am critical, but not as hard as you want me to be, it's probably because I know how there's a cause and effect to why he did something, right?
Right.
So if a guy misses a tackle, I could log on and I say he has to be a better tackler, and somebody would be like, you need to get on him further. You're just being a homer. You're soft on these guys. Well, I didn't want to tell you that the nose tackle got reached and the defensive end got knocked 5 yards into his lap, and that kind of contributed to why he didn't make the tackle, but that would be too much, right? Because in all fairness, I'm not going to pour gasoline on a fan, and feed red meat to a fan base that already they're seeing something. And yes, I am going to be a Giants fan until I die, folks. My teams represent some of the best years in this franchise's history. We brought the first Super Bowl, but you also have to know that I played for coaches and I had teammates and we held each other accountable. And that's why we were the best in the business. So I have no reason to betray myself or my training to go soft on anybody, right? I'm going to give it to you. You may not hear it the way you want to hear it, but I'm going to give you facts. And I'm okay with you criticizing if you don't feel that I've taken it to the levels that you want to take it to, but there's nothing I'm going to tell you that you're going to dispute and say, oh, he was full of shit or he was blowing smoke up our butts, and I don't want to relitigate this because this will get everybody going, but even in my, and I was a fan of Daniel Jones, right? But if he effed up, I would say he didn't play. He's got to play well. He's got to do better. I believed in his skill set. If he played a bad game, I didn't get on here and tell you he didn't. But I would tell people, yeah, I think he's got the skill set. I believe in his skill set, but it's up to him. And I still do believe that, right? But he's Indianapolis's problem now, or a gift, one or the other, right? But I was a big fan of him, and a lot of what happened to him, he had something to do with it, and the offensive line had something to do with it, and they just beat the broad daylights out of him. And I will say this, and we'll move on. The Dallas game was it Monday night, and it was raining, and they just beat him so bad. And Brian Daboll never took him out of the game.
Yeah.
And I think that scarred him. I don't know if he'll ever say it, but I'm looking at that. I'm like, they got to get him out of there because they can't protect him. That was the game that Andrew Thomas blew his hamstring.
Yeah, that was the home opener. Queen Latifah singing the national anthem, national televised game. I was actually on the field doing the flag ceremony of that game, so I remember coming off the field and getting back to the seats, and then the rain started. And I still will never forget where I was sitting with a friend of mine, and we were down 23. And I kept saying, no, we're going to come back. We can come back. We got a shot. And then he was like, no, we might lose by 50. And I was like, okay. But you never listen, guys. I put the link in the chat. I know I've talked to some people about coming on and asking your Carl Banks question.
Let's do it.
You went to Cleveland. You went to Washington. You left the Giant fold, and there was so much hate and animosity towards certain Giant players that have left and gone to divisional rivals such as Saquon Barkley. And I've always said that you're a professional athlete. You are going to go where the money is. You're going to go where you're going to get paid. You're going to go where you're wanted. You're going to go where you can extend your career. I've gotten in trouble for wearing a Saquon Barkley jersey if Philadelphia went on this channel because of the fact that he was a Giant. So, but now he's an Eagle, but I'm going to still support him because he was still a Giant. And did you I don't remember getting as much backlash when you went, when you were released also, when you went, to Cleveland.
When I went to Washington, I didn't have a choice to remain a Giant. I mean, Dan Reeves came in, and the day he walked through the door, he never saw me practice, workout, or anything. He just said he was going in a different direction. And he brought, I don't know, Brooks and some other player in, his Denver guys, and they were like, we don't want you. So I was like, all right. Then it came down to who was going to pay the most money. And so it was Washington, which was an awful experience. I fought every day in practice there because I didn't realize, which I probably should have, how personal it was because we beat them so much. And they just really never accepted me as a teammate. But I was like, I guess I can see the other side of this. If I was whooping on somebody so much and, they just didn't see me as a teammate there. I probably had 2 or 3 friends on the team there. And then, I went to Cleveland and I joined Pepper Johnson there with Belichick. And we helped get that thing turned around because they had a lot of talent. And we had kind of a record-setting defense the year before they announced the move, and we were probably going to be even better that next year. But Modell kind of loosened all the lugs on our wheels, and they just wobbled and fell off as the season went on.
The big question in the chat has been, have you ever considered being a linebacker coach or being just a coach in general in college, NFL? Going back to Michigan State.
At the NFL level, yeah, but I just don't have the time. That's really what it comes down to.
Well, I know you're on the Believe Network, so you're extremely busy with that, and also with FanDuel. Make sure everyone understands the FanDuel. Go to the FanDuel website right now. The New York Giants are 2.5-point underdogs on FanDuel as we speak. And if you're not familiar with it, FanDuel also, it's not just sports betting. They have slot machines. They have everything else that you can possibly find there. So for all your betting needs and all everything you want to take a look, you want to take a look at that Giants spread. Giants right now 2.5-point underdogs in Buffalo. We're going to Buffalo. We're shuffling off the Buffalo. I'm going to be in Buffalo, and again, with the changes in the preseason, I remember back when in the day, especially back in the 80s, that first game, the starters played like the first series or two. And then the next game they played into, sometimes into the second quarter, sometimes. And then the next game you played into the half.
Or maybe into the third quarter. If you were like a new player that is projected to be a starter, you're going to play probably into the third quarter.
Yeah. But nowadays, last year, Daniel Jones, and the year before that, Greg, I see you online. We're gonna get you in 1 second. Before the year before, the offense really only got one series, and you're not seeing as many times. And again, I definitely vis-a-vis because of injury. But again, is it to the detriment that we're not seeing people play sometimes more than a series in 3 games? And then they're expected to go into the season and perform at the level. Chicago, a couple of years back, didn't play any of their 1s and 2s the entire preseason. And then they went like 0-5 a coming into the season. They made the playoffs that year with Mitchell Trubisky, but it just showed that they weren't ready or prepared to start the season. So at this point in time, do you see that, James? I see you as well. So at this point in time, is it a detriment that they're not getting the amount of reps or any reps to starters that they possibly should be?
Again, like, we're in a new era of football. And I think health is more important to these coaches than as weird as it sounds, than getting the guys the necessary or the requisite reps in the preseason so that they will be able to hit the ground running. But, the trade-off for some of these coaches is, hey, look, if my guy gets hurt, I might not have him for 2 months.
Right.
To a basic injury, because the mentality of players is just not the same. They don't rush themselves back. And so they would rather trade off a slow start and having all of your guys a full complement of the roster than to go out there and put your guys in harm's way, which is the weirdest thing. It's football, right?
It's a collision sport.
It's a collision sport. So if you get them ready, the mindset is, but again, everybody's playing by the same rules. But for me, if I'm coaching, my players are going out there.
Right.
You're going to give me a quarter because I need to see sharpness. If I'm seeing offsides penalties in practice, I want to see if you can correct that in a game. And then for me also, I've been laser focused on, guys like Evan Neal and, what these defensive backs are doing, how Russell Wilson's doing with the receivers. I've seen enough, right? And it's time for me to zoom out. It's time for everybody to zoom out and see how they compete against other people, right? Because at a certain point, if you're in training camp going against the same guy, you kind of know what each other's going to do.
All the tendencies.
Right. So give me the first 10 days. I'll lock in and I'll say, oh, I know Evan Neal's improved, right? I know from OTAs to mini camp to training camp, I've seen him embrace the guard position. And now I see him get guys in the phone booth, right? Well, he's had his share of guys in blue in the phone booth. What can he do next? I need to zoom out and see him in an environment that's just not his own teammates. Right.
I don't want to cut you off, but I want to make sure I get to some of these people that have jumped in because they're all big Giant fans. They're all big Carl Banks fans. I'm going to start with Big Don out of Texas. Big Don, always working. You're leading off with Carl Banks. Don't screw it up. You got no audio. You already screwed it up.
Got no audio.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Don't screw up.
I got you, Big Tim. I got you, Big Tim. Yes, sir. That's what I got in my car. So there's no interference. There's no people walking around. I made sure for you, Tim.
Right.
Well, what's your Mr. Banks question?
All right, Mr. Banks got a question. I got a great question. You're gonna love it, Tim. You're gonna love it.
Oh God.
When you had your first Super Bowl, during practice, what running back would give you the most fits?
In our practice, I would say Tony Galbraith. If we had to do one-on-one pass drills or something like that, he was incredible. He was the guy. Joe Morris was straight Joe Morris, but I would say Tony Galbraith was the guy who gave us the fits in areas that we needed to improve in. He was the guy that was doing that for us.
Tony Galbraith, when he came over from Minnesota, he had this spin move that anytime he got the ball, and it was weird because it almost looked like he was older, probably 31, but he did this spin move and it looked like he was doing it in slow motion. And I used to laugh as a kid watching the game because I'm like, it's like, is this in slow motion? How come they can't stop him? But
because his footwork was so good. Tony Galbraith had great footwork.
Don, do you have another question? Are you good?
Oh, I just, I was leading in. I just want to hear some 315 propaganda in there. That's why I wanted to ask that.
Big Don, Mr. Syracuse. He was waiting for a Joe Morris. Big Don's a big Syracuse fan, so he was waiting for a Joe Morris. Jim Brown, Floyd, everyone.
Yeah, well, Joe Morris is the ultimate teammate, man. You talk about a guy who could rise to any occasion. He was that guy. The more you told him he was too short or too small or too weak, he just got better and better. And he had the biggest voice, not the loudest voice, but he had the biggest voice in our locker room in terms of getting us ready to play, getting us motivated. His offensive lineman will tell you, but even from a defensive perspective, if we're having a bad practice, his voice was big. He carried weight.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, you also got to remember, Big Don, that he was beaten out initially by #1 draft choice Butch Woolfolk for a bunch of years.
Yeah.
Before being number 25 from Michigan, before he finally stepped up in that season. So I'm not going to give you too much credit, Don. But brother, man, I'm going to talk to you later. I'm going to get someone else on. All right, Big Don.
Appreciate you.
Stay safe. Stay out of that heat, my friend.
Nice talking to you, man.
We're going all the way to Sweden. And we're going to go to Greg, big Giants, all the way from Sweden. Greg, you are on with Carl Banks. I know you DM'd me or texted me yesterday, asked me. I got to ask him a question. So I said, here you go. Here's your chance.
Yes, you played in an era where toughness and discipline defined the Giants. What do you see missing in today's team culture compared to those championship days?
Toughness and discipline. But it's it can be there. It can get there. I think they have the right type of players now. I think having someone because they were a young roster, having someone like Russell Wilson on this roster and even Jameis Winston. But Russell has been through adversity and come out on the other side, right? So he can actually tell players what's on the other side of this struggle. But he can also motivate guys. And Russell's a chronically positive person. And then you have Jameis Winston. That's Jameis Wisdom, I call him, because he helps a young roster. So, they put all of these sayings in the building, and I noticed they're not up there anymore. The smart, tough, discipline, all of these different things, all of those signs are down now. So, apparently they get the message that we ain't there yet. And there's just kind of, I think, 5 or 6 bullet points. And it's none of those slogans. So I think when you have a guy like Dexter Lawrence, who's a quiet leader, but then you contrast that with Brian Burns, who wants to hold his teammates accountable. And then you have a Malik Neighbors. And I didn't even tell you this, Tim. I don't know if you saw it. There was a play in their first padded practice. One of the receivers, one of the young receivers, catches a ball, and he's running, and it's a foot race to the end zone, and he steps out at the 1-yard line. Malik Neighbors sprints down the field and just chews him out and says, "You better score," because he's right there. All I had to do is either dive or lay the ball over. And I was like, that's leadership.
Yep.
That's the type of leadership where you want to hold guys accountable, where you want your guys to strive for more, right? Where a college mentality, nobody would have probably said anything to this kid, but Neighbors is like, no, we score in this league. That's the type of leadership that they need. So having Russell Wilson there also empowers guys like Malik Neighbors, and it empowers a guy like Brian Burns to just continue to be leaders, because they've got kind of a guy who has the template for success. And then all of these guys that can look at him and say, what do I need to do to be successful? And he can tell them, and he's a pretty straight shooter. So smart, discipline, tough, all of that stuff, it's not there until it's there, and I think they know they have to earn those monikers now.
Thank you.
All right, Greg. Thank you so much for always supporting. I'll text you later, my brother. Oh, I gotta bring this guy in because this guy is literally my brother from another mother. This guy has been a supporter of the channel for years. He was someone that everyone knows. He literally started with the channel. We started hanging out because of the channel. We've become, I mean, the closest of friends. So I know he's excited to come on and ask Carl a question. I'm doing the build up for you, James, for Carl. So there you go. It's of course the one, the only. I see a couple other people. We're gonna get the Big Dash. We're gonna get the Strider and everyone else, but it's the one and the only, my brother, James Williams.
Oh, thank you, brother. I was too gracious of you, Mr. Banks. I just got to say salute to you, sir. You know, from me, Giants fans everywhere. First thing I got to say is thank you.
Wow, you can smile, James.
For your contributions, brother. You know, I'm 42. Without you and the teams you played on, you know, you got me into being a Giants fan. So just want to say salute to you. And thank you for being here, brother. And I appreciate you, man. Quick question. You know, you're a legend. You're a great football player. I feel like today's players, you know, they like to salute you guys in a different manner. How would you feel if a younger player coming up asked you if they could wear your number? How would you feel about that?
I mean, my number has been worn a lot. Right?
I know.
By some good players and some bad players. I look at it differently, and you know, there are some numbers that shouldn't be touched, and 56 is one of them. But you know, for anything and everything that I've accomplished, I'm in the Ring of Honor. So I got, you know, my jersey, as far as I'm concerned, when I wore it, is in the Ring of Honor. So anybody else that wears it, you know, the burden's on them to be as good and, you know, to get that, you know, get that honor as well. So, you know, it's flattering, you know, but there are just some that you just don't touch. You know, I don't think they're touching 13 in Miami.
True.
You know, what was it? Joe Montana's jersey. I don't think his number going to be touched either. So I guarantee you when Patrick Mahomes finally hangs it up, you won't see another number. You won't see his number again either. So, but that's, you know, where Lawrence is. And I'm not insulted that Abdul Carter wanted to wear that number. It was worth a try, but I'm happy that he didn't, and I'm happy he changed his mind because he just doesn't understand the pressure. Number one, if he were ever to get that number, the amount of fans that would be upset about it, and they would not let this kid breathe, I guarantee you. And it would be like, you're disgracing his number, and he would really never have a shot at being great. But I love the fact that, you know, he's got his own number. He's gonna make it whatever it's going to be. And, you know, he doesn't have to worry about any comparisons to Lawrence because that, I mean, it's not a novelty. That, you know, number 56 is not a novelty number. That's hallowed ground. That's, you know, the best that ever did it. Right. So asking for that is a little different. It's a little different. He's not the best in Giants history. He's the best to ever do it. So
yes, sir.
That's, you know, that it transcends Giant legacy. It's league legacy.
When the Giants gave Malik Neighbors number 1, of course, that was Tom Flaherty's number. And Tom Flaherty, a lot of people don't remember who he is, but he was not only the first Giant number retired, he was the first number retired in NFL history. So I think there was kind of a lineage there. Did you think that, in your opinion, that, and I know the Flaherty family gave the blessing, you know, that he could wear it, but I mean, do you have an opinion on retiring and unretiring numbers again? Because the Giants are going to probably, after Malik's career is over, and this is the kind of where I'm going with this. Let's say Malik has this prolific Hall of Fame number retiring career, and he's wearing number 1, but we're going to say, no, we're going to go give it back to Tom because, you know, that was the initial.
Well, I guess they'll both be retired then. They're retired as both players.
I was going to say, are they going to retire 1A, 1B?
Probably. If he has that type of career. I don't know if I even have I don't have that big of an issue with unretiring numbers. I don't think they should be. But if it happens, just the player better know he's got some big shoes to fill, and then there are some that just shouldn't be touched, period. But there are others, when you have organizations that have not had a lot of success, but, maybe had some individuals that were really good within the organization, and they get like a player that could be generational who wants that number, I'm sure they'd be tempted, but I don't think if they got the next Tony Baselli in Jacksonville that they would be giving him Tony's number, but in some teams, they don't have a big, rich legacy, right? And their ring of honor is just not, you look at it and it's like, okay, they were great for the team. But we talk about players that are league greats, all-time greats. I don't think you even, you probably, if a rookie comes in, you just hand them a sheet of paper and say, these numbers are not available. Can be done with it.
We're going to bring in everyone. James, you're staying, so don't worry. We're going to bring in Big Dash. Everyone knows Big Dash, the venerable content creator. Oh, we also got Slider coming in as well. So, but let's get to Big Dash. Big Dash, someone, of course, I started following when he first came out, and he has reached that pinnacle of success. Dash, you're on with James.
What up, Dash?
You're on with James Williams.
What's going on, James?
Yeah, Carl Banks.
Shout out to James. Now, good morning, everybody. Tim, how you doing? It's early over here on the West Coast. Carl, how you doing, Carl?
I'm good, man.
Yeah, man, I'm excited about this too, man. For those that don't know, you are my favorite Giants player, and I'm not just saying it for right now. People know that, man.
Thank you, man.
I had some questions about just the Giants practices now, and like Brian Daboll's been known, or I should say the Giants been known to have like light practices and stuff like that. And then now you're seeing guys running gassers. You're seeing guys getting checked out of plays for, pre-snap penalties. Do you feel like there's more accountability in practice and, more physical practices, or, however you want to explain it?
Before Carl answers, they ran the gassers twice, I think, and I think they were 10 yards apiece. So it's not like back in the old days. I mean, you're going off the whistle, and you're not stopping until one of you pukes.
I still haven't seen it since Joe Judge, but yeah.
So yes, they are. There is a different element of accountability with, and it starts from top to bottom. Joe Shane, the coaching staff, and the players, but they are all bought into it as well. Because, as much as we heard in the offseason about why the general manager shouldn't be back and why the head coach shouldn't be back, you got players who didn't do their part also that are back, or that they felt, or the feeling was that they could have done more. So they all want to be better. They believe that they have better talent. I think it's visibly better. So, yeah, why not waste? I mean, why would you want to waste that? I would be hair on fire every day if I was coaching, knowing that, my seat is still hot, but I got all this talent and I got 2 drafts under my belt where my roster is actually changing now. I'm not saddled with C-level free agents to try to get through the season. Right now, you got top line guys where, if you think about it, you had some guys that were brought in as free agents that were starters that probably would be backups in any other situation, right? And they were counted on to be starters. So what does that say for the backups to those guys? They were third teamers, right? And they're playback. So you just had a less talented roster that now has turned over into NFL. They've entered the NFL in personnel, especially on the offensive line. So, yeah, they are all bought in. And again, I'm not making any projections. I know they're a better team. I know you'll see, better results. I don't know what that record's going to look like, but you'll see that this is a better football team. And obviously at the quarterback position, it's upgraded tremendously. So, and here, let me ask you guys this, and I want your honest answer. let's say Russell Wilson catches lightning in the bottle and the Giants are freaking rolling, right? How do you incorporate Jackson Dart? Is it, sorry, kid, you're going to have to sit this one out another year? Go ahead, Dash.
So I'm glad you asked this question. And for me, I care way more about the New York Giants than I do care about Jackson Dart. And I understand he might be the future, but it's all about winning for me. And if Russell Wilson is catching fire, I don't need to see Jackson Dart this year at all. And that's been my opinion for a long time now. Yeah.
I'll say as a season ticket holder since 76, or family season ticket holder since 76, and everything that I've seen, if they're winning, let it be a Jeff Hostetler moment. Let it be a moment where Jeff sits on the bench. You know, if Jackson, I don't want Jackson Dart going out there trying to block kicks and punts. But let's just sit on the bench. Let him learn, because I wanted to talk about Jackson Dart because after seeing what I've seen in camp, there are moments and there are things that we have pointed out here, and we've kind of gone through the film ad nauseum, that he does well, but there are some things that you look at and you're kind of like, okay, he's a rookie, and there was a reason why a lot of pundits said that he probably should redshirt this year. Judy Batista was on the other day, and her first thing was, she would like to see him sit the entire season as well. So if the Giants are winning and we need to just call it a redshirt year for Jackson Dart, I'm good with that. I mean, like I said, as long as we're going towards a goal of getting to the playoffs, because I would like to see a home playoff game before I die. And I'm getting older, so I need a Knicks win, Knicks championship, and a Giant home playoff game.
Yeah, you and me both with the Knicks now.
I know that's all. That's all I want. James, what about you?
We all need that. Oh, well, I mean, honestly speaking, brother Carl, you said to be honest. So the fact that Russell Wilson is the first, we're all brothers here, but he's the first brother I've seen starting for a New York Giants team going into game 1. If he were to catch lightning in the bottle, I would love to just see him go as far as he can. And like my other brother said, I think Dart can wait till next year. And we need to just put all our chips on the table with Wilson if he's on fire like that. It would be nice to see.
That's cool. I think that's a fair assessment. I just woke up this morning thinking about that. I was like, if they catch lightning in the bottle, how do you just give Jackson Dart mop-up time, which would be that we would love to have that problem, right, folks? Like, they put some points up on the board and, okay, Jackson, you got the fourth quarter. It's almost like basketball, right? And you never see that in football because, you score by sixes and not by twos. But if you could get some kind of margin during some of these games, and obviously we're projecting success in these games, to be able to put them in to get that kind of experience while, the quarterback Russ rides the lightning.
I'm going to reverse that question on you, Carl. Let's just say the Giants go the opposite direction. You said it. You said it with Bob Papa on a stream for Believe a couple of weeks back, where you said everything could change by November. We could be happy, we could not be happy. But let's say we don't play well. Let's say Jackson Dart doesn't play well. You have the first overall pick in the next year's draft, and let's say, for sake of all sakes, Arch Manning, for some unknown reason, even though we all know Manning stay 4 years, but let's just say for some unknown reason, Arch is sitting there at number 1. You traded assets to get 25. In your opinion, what do the Giants trade out? Do they take that, what people are going to call a generational quarterback, because you have Jackson Dart? I mean, what about that situation?
So there's a few things to get to that. You got to be awful to get the number 1 pick, which means that you're going to fire a coach and you're going to fire a general manager. Mm-hmm. And the new guy comes in is going to have to articulate what type of, if he likes what's on the roster, if he wants to pick his own quarterback, right? So a lot of that, the wheels would have to completely fall off for that to happen. And if that does happen, then you probably go with Arch Manning. If you got the first pick in the draft, you probably go with Arch Manning. I mean, that's going to be the prerogative of the new coach and general manager. If he wants to start fresh and he thinks, Arch is the answer, you do it. But just as Giant fans, you're probably going to be on suicide hotlines if the season goes that bad, where they're in position to be picking number one.
So, listen, I remember 3-12-1. I sat in the stands at 3-12. I was there when Phil Simms broke his thumb on the helmet in the Eagle game. I mean, I don't want to live through that again. Dash, I'm gonna have to drop you off, brother, because I got to bring someone else in. Everyone of course, everyone knows it's Big Dash knows. He also does that stream late in the evening. So
you're invited.
All the hey, you're only inviting me because Carl's here. If no, I should ask you to get invited on your show for a month. Carl's here now. I mean, Carl, you can never leave. You always have to. Carl's going to be here every Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time because Big Dash.
Tim, I said it. It's an open invitation. I don't send out invites.
I know, brother. I appreciate it, Dash. But again, follow Big Dash because Big Dash does now.
Big Dash.
I appreciate it, my friend. I gotta bring in Slider here, also known as Strider, but on this date he is Slider. You know what, Slider? You have the ball. You're on with Carl Banks. I know you're not walking today, so you're not getting your exercise. So
yeah.
So you're staying in the car, staying hydrated.
Yeah. Yes. That is. And hello, Carl. Good morning from California. Big Giant fan for many years. I guess I got a couple questions for you, and I wanted to show you a surprise, but I can't find it because you were on a book that taught like the basics of defense. And like you taught how to close in on tackles on defense, how to set it up. I'm sorry, I couldn't find it, so it was a little bit of a downer for that. But my question, I got a couple questions for you. One is that Super Bowl performance you had, but how did you truly feel about the 25 defense that Bill Belichick was planning? Like you had to give up, you were gonna give up like 100 yards on the ground pretty much on purpose. But it helped you guys exceed on that passing, on the pass plays because Jim Kelly was, the K gun. Yeah. Like, how did you truly feel about that?
When Bill started off the meeting saying that we have to allow 100 yards to Thurman Thomas, we lost our mind because again, we were one of these prideful defenses that we didn't concede that. We would never go into a game conceding, giving somebody 100 yards. But then Bill, being Bill, told us why, if he got 100 yards, they would lose the game. And though we still didn't want him to get 100 yards, but he started off by saying, we normally go back 4 games to see what the tendencies are. And, if somebody's doing something for 4 straight games, it's a tendency. But since week 6, the Buffalo Bills have 1 run, which is a draw, and everything else was a swing pass to Thurman Thomas. So he said, that's not a tendency, that's a trend. And we have enough information to show that they have no interest in running the football. They have a draw and their runs are swing passes to Thurman Thomas. So we have to prepare to stop the pass. And he had showed the Raiders game where it was, basically a track meet. They were just, before the Raiders could even get into their pass coverage, the ball was caught and they were running. And he's like, we're going to pre-align so that we can see the receivers, hit the receivers as much as possible. And so when they get the ball, we're all set and ready to hit them. And if they run the draw, we still have enough people on the field to come up and make a tackle. But we want to eliminate the pass. So to answer your question, how did we feel about that? Not good at first, but, in true Bill Belichick and Bill Parcells fashion, there's always a why. They give us the why, and we buy in because we knew that it still gave us an opportunity to punish our opponent, right? And, for us to play the style of defense we did that game, and then the offensive game plan with Otis was just to run the ball and to take, as much time off the clock as possible. That enabled us to win the game because Buffalo was so talented, man, and people just didn't really know how to stop them. And credit that defensive staff for coming up with that game plan, which is now in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. I gotta get the Giants among men. No, we're being professionals today, so there's no sound effects, but we will play one for Carl.
What's your assignment? Kill the quarterback. Get the tight end so hard his girlfriend dies.
That's for the venerable Carl Banks. We wanted to make sure we had one sound effect today, so thank you for Giants running. Right. Lida, what's your other question?
All right, I got two more. You also played that season with a broken arm, a broken hand. Were you supposed to miss the whole season if you didn't get that cast? Like if you didn't, were you supposed to miss the whole season?
Yeah, I was supposed to be out. I was supposed to be out the whole year. I had total wrist reconstruction. At first, it was a dislocation. There was this bone sticking out in the Dallas game, and I told the trainer, I'm like, I need some tape. And they looked at it, it's like, you're not going back in the game. And I was like, why? It's like, you got a dislocated wrist. Because I was just like, tape it up and, and so that night they sent me to the hospital and put me in this Chinese finger trap where the bones kind of all slide back into place. And
wow,
they did that. There was some complications, infection, and all kinds of other stuff. So they just did a whole wrist reconstruction. But I worked like hell because I'm from an era where you don't want to miss games, right? Because I loved my teammates, the late Johnny Cooks and Andy Haddon and Byron Hunt. I didn't want to lose playing time. That's just how competitive we are. And if they had to come in, I'm going to root hard for them because it's just our standard. But I wanted to be a part of playing that game. And I remember after the surgery, after they reset it, we were going to Washington. And that's when I found out that, there were some complications in there. In the Washington game, I literally played with one arm. And they were like, because I couldn't sleep the night before, it was a cast on it, and I thought the cast was too tight. They literally cut the cast off and it was still hurting. And so, but I didn't want to miss the game. And so that Washington game, I'm in the locker room and they didn't think I was going to play. And so I asked the doctor, I said, look, since I'm having surgery tonight, is there anything worse that could happen? And Dr. Warren said, well, I can protect the wrist if you can take the pain. And I was like, okay, just if you tell me I can't do any further damage to this, I'm playing. And so he said, are you sure you will be able to, because I was in a lot of pain. And I was like, give me 4 Tylenol. And I went out and played on 4 Tylenol. And I went and had surgery. And so I had the surgery. And then the clock was ticking, right? So they had a great hand surgeon. Dr. Andrew Weiland came in and he basically said, you're probably going to miss the year, but if you're aggressive in your rehab, you may be able to make it back by the end of the year, but I wouldn't recommend it. But all I needed was just, him to say that it was possible. And then the rest of it was up to me. So,
wow,
worked really hard to get back.
There in the 90s, we've talked about on the show before many times. I've had coaches tell me there's a difference between being hurt and being injured. You had to know the difference. And back in the 90s, it was always rub some dirt on it and get back in the game. You're fine. Yeah. You'll be all right. But Slater, you have one more question?
Yeah. So of course this is about your teammate, the great Lawrence Taylor, and I'm sure he did it with you around. I know about the sleeping during the meetings, but is it true if he didn't like the play that was being drawn up, he would rewrite it? Especially if you had Bill Belichick as the defensive coordinator. If he saw it and he didn't like it, he's like, no, it should be like this. And then he would rewrite it.
Yeah. I mean, that was the brilliance of Lawrence Taylor, that he saw the game different, right? And the fact that we had an environment that allowed for that to happen, where, and forgive me for going off on this tangent, but in today's coaching, you have so many coaches that are so insecure that if a player has an idea or a better way and they see it, the coach pushes back. And we had coaches that were so secure that if you had a suggestion and you went up and drew it up and they looked at it and could not say, well, no, this is going to happen if you do that, they would be like, okay, we're going to use that. That's just, and plus we were very smart players, but Lawrence was different. Lawrence was, he saw the game different than everybody else. And, the sleeping and meeting part was kind of a thing, but, the one story I always tell is we're on a Friday getting ready for Washington, and we're in our pass rush install, and he was asleep under a table, and our coach was upset, cut the lights on, and just screamed at Lawrence. He's like, we're doing this, and I would think you would be awake for this part of the meeting. And in true Lawrence fashion, he has sunglasses on, and he takes his sunglasses off, and he says, okay, cut the tape on. And he looks at one. We were in the meeting for about an hour, just trying to figure out our pass rush schematics. He sees one play, and he runs it back again, and then he cuts the lights on and goes up to the board and draws up our pass rush and goes back to sleep.
Oh my God.
It was the most amazing thing, man, because it was we were literally going over the what ifs in all of these different scenarios. He looks at a play twice and then drew it up, told us why this is what we should be doing. And then he asked the coach, he says, okay, if I go back to sleep now. So, yeah, he's special, man. He's different. He saw the game different.
Wow.
I was actually going to ask about that story because I've heard that story before, and I always wondered if that was true.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, I have the book of LT, and he said he would do that. And I'm like, so I needed reassurance from Carl Banks. Did he actually do it? And it's hopefully true.
I mean, we had that type of coaching staff. They were very secure, but they were also knew that they could get better from feedback from live action. And if you guys indulge me again, I'll give you another quick story of Lawrence. We were playing, and this is another game against Washington, and my job was to go and follow Donnie Warren, their tight end, because they would try to get a tight end on Lawrence. So we would flip-flop, right? So Joe Gibbs, in true Joe Gibbs fashion, was doing a little yo-yo motion, and the clock is running down. So he does one last motion, and Lawrence and I are stuck on the same side, right? And they thought they had us beat, but it was a pass. And so Lawrence looks at me and says, don't go over there, stay right here. And he said, rush inside of Joe Jacoby, and he rushed outside. And it completely, we blew the quarterback up. And so we're laughing coming off to the sideline, and Bill Belichick said, what did you guys do? And Lawrence like, well, he got stuck over here, and I wasn't fucking running on the other side. So I just told him to stay. And so, but it was so successful. And in true Belichick fashion, he says, okay, we're going to do that, but I need to balance the other side of the line in case they, get caught on to what we're doing and we're outflanked. So they gave us the same thing again. we had a call which moved our backside defensive end out so that we would be balanced. And that play was in our playbook, as another weapon. But it just happened because Lawrence, don't move, stay right here. Because I guess he knew it was pass, and we had them outnumbered, and it was great. But when we came off the field and Belichick said, and he wasn't screaming like, "What the fuck did you guys just do?" He's like, "What is that? What did you guys just do?" And Lawrence said, "Well, they were effing with us, and I just told Carl to stay because I knew it was going to be a pass, and we were going to take advantage of Jacoby." Wow. And Belichick said, "Okay, give me the whiteboard," and he just drew it up, and he said, "Is this what you guys did?" And he said, "Yeah." And he said, "Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to keep this in." He gave it a name. He said, "But the defensive end on the backside, you're going to have to go out to a 5 technique." And it was a beautiful thing. But that's the brilliance of Lawrence Taylor.
Slider, I'm gonna drop you off, brother. I appreciate you coming on and asking your Carl Banks question. Slider's always been a big supporter as well. And also, you want to give you a plug to your gaming channel?
Yes. It's a gaming channel. I play mostly video games. Also a big Giants fan. But please subscribe to my channel. I truly appreciate it. And Carl, thank you for the interview. It's an honor to meet you, sir.
My pleasure, man. My pleasure.
Carl, you brought up Lawrence Taylor. You had another linebacker on that team that's Hall of Famer, number 53, Carl Banks. I'm Carl Banks. Harry Carson. I'm looking at Carl Banks thinking Harry Carson. Harry seemed to be the consummate professional, the no-nonsense guy, the football mind. And then you had Lawrence Taylor, kind of the polar opposite of the spectrum. Was there any times or was there any, I always wondered, did some of Lawrence's antics, kind of wear thin with Harry?
So we have this saying about Harry Carson. He's our captain for life. There was no nonsense. Like, he was the guy who was there when planes were flying over the stadium. He understood how important the fan base was. I mean, he was the guy, he and George Martin, but Harry in particular, because he was our guy. He was in the middle of our huddle. So if there was some nonsense going on with Lawrence, the guy who could check him would be Harry, and there was no pushback when Harry spoke. He was a man's man, right? When you want to talk about leadership, I think it was Pepper Johnson's rookie year. And we have all of these Washington stories. It was George Rogers was the running back, and Harry told Pepper and I, put some shorts on. This is pregame. He said, put some shorts on. We got to go outside for a second. So the Redskins are warming up, and me, Harry, and Pepper, he takes us through the entire stretching of the Redskins. And he walks up to George Rogers and says, "You're going to fumble 3 times today, homeboy." And then he turns around and we walk out. Like, he literally walked into enemy territory. We just walked in. He told him that, and we walked back to the locker room. Sure enough, we forced 3 fumbles on George Rogers.
And of course, George Rogers was taken before Lawrence Taylor in that draft. You and after the '90s Super Bowl, there was a shift over to Ray Handley, and I think that sometimes it's hard to follow a legend, and Parcells had his 2 rings, and a lot of people say that maybe it was a mistake by the Giant organization to stay in house to go with Ray Handley. As a fan, I expected at least another Super Bowl. I was thinking we're going to get at least one more, and it didn't kind of work out that way. Do you think Ray Handley gets too much of the blame for what happened after the Parcells era? Well, that's a good answer, because that's what I was hoping.
Of all the coaches on that staff, you could have picked anyone other than Ray, and we would have had success. Ray had no people skills, could not communicate. And he was that coach that was my way or the highway. And then he brings in Rod Rust, who, for all intents and purposes, was jealous of Bill Belichick because he came in and wanted to undo everything that we had, a system that we had that made us a top 5 defense in the league. He went in, was trashing it and talking about his read and react defense where, he was, I think, in New England at the time, and obviously he thought they were better. But yeah, I mean, it was I think that was a bad choice. And I don't know if you guys know, I had an incident, a locker room incident with Ray Handley that got physical. But he was, aside from that, he just wasn't a good choice as a coach.
I was going to ask about that, and I don't know if you want to divulge any information. That's always been I've had 2 questions for Carl Banks that I've always wanted to ask. Question number 1 is, you met me in '87. Did you know then that you were meeting greatness when you met me? And what really
I did.
Those are the 2 questions I've always had.
Yes, I knew I was in the presence of greatness. Yes.
I knew you had to. You could tell.
It's called the aura. It's called the aura.
There you go, Giants Among Men. There's a second sound effect for you.
So the situation with Ray and myself, I think we were down, we were losing, and everybody was bitching and complaining, just the way things were going, the calls being made, and I was having some back spasms, and so I needed to get to the training room to get some treatment before I went into our halftime stuff with the coaches. And everybody, I mean, they're cursing the coaches out, and it was just a bad thing. And I told Coach, I says, Coach, I'm getting ready to go get, some heat on my back. And I just went towards the training room, and he grabbed me by the back of my pads and pulled me and told me, get the fuck in the meeting. And then I snapped. And the next thing I know, I had him pent up in a locker. I was holding him by his neck. And I think it terrified all my teammates. And even Lawrence is like, you can't fucking do that. You guys are fucking coach. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. He's yeah. So that was my, situation with Ray, but he was, they could have picked anybody else but him. And then I look up after I let the coach down, there's Frank Mara standing there looking at me. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be fired tomorrow. But I didn't come from a place where coach puts hands on players. It's just that simple. And I'm a grown man. It definitely wasn't gonna fly.
If you had one moment, good or bad, in Giant history that sticks with you the most, it could be anything. I mean, because like I said, I have moments like I said, I did not have a prolific playing career outside. It ended at college, but I always have those moments I think of, and I think of one moment in time that is like, what, that kind of defined who I was as a player. Is there a moment that defines Carl Banks as a Giant in your mind, I should say?
I would say a defining moment, and it was probably my my welcome to the starting lineup moment, is we played the Rams in the playoffs. This is when Eric Dickerson was there, so this had to be my rookie year or my second year maybe. And they had beat us up pretty good in the regular season. And I remember Bill Parcells coming in our meeting room and saying, I'm giving $1,500 to the first person that puts that Eric Dickerson on his ass. And the first play of the game, they ran an outside run to me, and it was Eric Dickerson for a 5-yard loss. And I think that was the moment that, I think people realized, and even myself, that I had arrived as a Giants linebacker. Because that was, they had our number pretty much, but we ended up winning the game. But you talk about setting the tone. We were talking about that earlier, and that was the tone setter, right? Like I'm saying, and I didn't know they were going to run the ball, but I'm saying to myself, if they run the ball, I'm getting this guy. They're not going to run the ball on me. And sure enough, they ran a toss, and I beat the tight end, and I hit Eric for a 5-yard loss, and that kind of set the tone for our defense.
I love this one. But by the way, congratulations, Carl. Not just a fantastic career, but I think I haven't heard Tim stay this quiet so long. Dom, of course, all the way from across the pond. He is a huge Giants supporter all the way from the UK. He actually flew out to hang out with us. That's Dom.
Nice.
And yes, Dom is that short. He is standing on the rail right there. So yeah,
that's awesome.
And you got to love it because he was such a good sport that he literally came on to the show once wearing a Wilson's autographed helmet, my college shoulder pads, and a game-worn Giant jersey. So I got to give a big props. So he is on vacation. I know he wanted to try to come on and say hello. I also want to give a big shout out to Ryan's Big Boo podcast, who is just a new podcaster coming up that I'm kind of working with. Ryan's going on a cruise, so he wanted to also just give his best wishes to Carl.
Nice.
Say, he really does.
Ryan.
He really does appreciate you coming on. I just want to get back to the actual Giants, because I have so many Carl Banks questions about your career I could keep asking, but you said you don't want to give a prediction. You said you do, and also, like I said, to me, it's too early. We haven't even had the first preseason game, but not to put a number on, not put a quantifiable number on wins and losses. Better or worse than last year from your perspective?
Better.
Now, better. See, I am going to kind of put a number.
I mean, even on a win-loss record, they're better than the few wins they got last year.
Better or worse than the 9-7-1 team that went to the playoffs?
TBD.
Okay.
I can only tell you they'll be better than their worst. And I can't tell you if they'll be better than their best under Dable, but they'll be better than their worst under Dable.
Brian Daboll, coach of the year first season, but to me it was a dichotomy of 2 seasons. He was 7-2, then 2-5-1 towards the end of the year, and they won some games, starting with the Tennessee game off the missed field goal. Saquon Barkley, had the big game as well, and then I remember the tie against Washington, because I'll always remember Joe Shane, because running down the tunnel to get onto the field to watch the end of the game. And I saw him running back out because we're in the coaches club. And the first thing you could see on his lips is, I can't believe we lost this effing game. And I was like, well, no, it wasn't a loss. It was a tie, but I kind of understood where he was. And then Dable goes 6-11, and then we go 3 games. I mean, you have a certain segment of the fan base that's kind of like, why am I putting my trust in Dable where the Giants have gotten prolifically worse each year? And if you take a look at his career outside of Josh Allen, he's pretty much outside of college has been released or fired from every other job. I mean, why? I mean, if you had a take on this, what would you tell Giant fans that listen, stay the course, or what would you say to them when they bring these things up in reference to the head coach?
If they say, why should we? I would say you have every right to ask that question. And it's up to Coach Dable to prove that he's, up to the task. I think he's a brilliant offensive mind. I think he's a brilliant play caller. I think the head coaching thing is something that he's leaning into every aspect of it. So we'll see. I think he's up for the task, but if anybody has doubts, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to convince you otherwise. That's up to him. That's up to him. That's up to his coaching staff. I'm rooting for his success 100% because I think he is capable and the guy for the job. I do. But that's up to him. It really is. And if folks say, why should we? And I'm saying that's fair. Hold your powder until you see different. And I think he will win you guys over. I think, one of the things we saw from Coach Dable, and especially if you look at the Germany game, he can scheme a guy open.
Yeah.
You had the quarterback that couldn't hit him, couldn't find him, panicked. But he can every game. And I thought, even though fans were upset because they were thinking draft, but if you look at the Indianapolis game and the game that he called against a team that had everything on the line, everything to lose, their playoff team, they beat the Giants. And I thought that was one of the best offensive performances that they had. And I said, that's a glimpse into what they can be when healthy. I mean, that was a great, great play calling by him, and guys were open, and he was able to hit guys down the field. And that was something I was like, that's the Dable that people should expect. That's the Giant offense that fans should expect to see. And they should demand to see it instead of criticizing a meaningless win, which it's not. Look at it from the perspective, that's what I've been waiting for all year. And because there's nothing you can do to change the season, you can look at the circumstances and say, if you can give me that next year, I'm going to be a big fan of Brian Daboll, because that offense looked like an NFL offense against a team that had something to play for. They weren't winding down their season. They were playing for playoffs. So, but what they did, if I'm a Giants fan and you're skeptical, I know you were pissed off, by the win, but now that that's in the books, I think you should demand that this offense look like that and then some.
Robert wants to say, Carl is the big reason why I mute the TV and turn the radio on during Giant games. Robert.
Appreciate you, Robert.
You're supposed to kiss my ass. Not Carl. Carl's only here now. I'm going to be here forever. Remember? Also got to ask me, he says, big thanks to Carl for coming on the podcast. Let's make him a regular. You already have a regular podcast. He works, of course, with Bob Papa. He does radio play-by-play. He also is on the Believe Network. What is the title of the pod on the Believe Network again? It's Believe in Giants. It is Believe in Giants. I got a Bob Papa question.
Tell a friend to tell a friend.
James is laughing. I got a Bob Papa question. And
okay.
I asked a question a couple of years back at a town hall to Daniel Jones, and I was very prevalent. I said who I was, and I always said this. I was one of the few Giant fans ever to get booed on Broadway, because of course, the season ticket holders thing, and James is shaking his head. So Bob, you're Bob, kind of called me out for asking the question, and he kind of got a little indifferent about it because of the fact that then he was like, well, you and I get up, we battle on Twitter, and I was like, I don't even know I was like, I don't even follow you, Bob Papa, but I want you to tell Bob for me that I'm not the guy on Twitter that he thinks I am. So,
okay.
I just want him to tell I'm a real nice guy.
All right.
I haven't said anything bad yet, right?
Listen, and if you did that, you're entitled to that. Like, I mean, I remember when we had first agreed to have me on, people were like, why are you going on the most negative podcast ever? Dude, if you listen to yourself, you're being negative. So I'm like, look, man, I mean, there's, people have opinions, and it's all right. I mean, we don't have to agree on everything and still have this level of conversation for 2 hours,
Right.
True.
Oh, exactly. And Mr. Bruce has a question, and Mr. Bruce is a big supporter of the show. Carl, do you think DJ was worth the money? Do you believe that he held us back, including this current season?
Well, the money that he made was going to make it somewhere else, but the Giants, and I don't think the Giants had a choice because they didn't have any options available. Did he hold you back? No, not really. They were going to make a change. this year anyway. And it's just, I think he had his flaws. The team was flawed. And I'll say it ad nauseum, it's a cause and effect. The offensive line was really bad. And I think it impacted his internal clock. And he just never got back on track, in my opinion. He never trusted what he saw. He didn't make great decisions. And, I kind of know why. As somebody who beats on quarterbacks for a living, I know how that impacts a quarterback. And then if he has to do it for, 3 or 4 straight games, taking 5 sacks, it's hard to trust what you see sometimes. But I don't think he held anybody back, especially if you're talking about this season when you've had a great draft and you're having a really good Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. I don't know. I think it worked out okay. He's in Indianapolis and having his opportunities, and the Giants have turned over a new leaf, and the head coach got his own quarterback.
OG Knockout says, not negative, just the truth. The show has been right so far. We do have a pretty good track record. Carl, I love this question from Jay Ferris. Carl, what inspires your incredible fashion sense?
That's a good question. My mother, my father. I've come from a part of the country in Michigan, Detroit, Flint, where we dress up and we put things together. I don't know. I think my parents inspired my fashion sense.
Are you going to bring back the white starter jacket?
So funny you say that.
You should.
I have the original.
Yes.
We have the original blue. We also have the original black on the floor, and I have the original red. I don't have the white.
Yeah, we're working on that. I mean, there's a legacy game coming up, and we're working on that. So hopefully we can make it happen. And to be honest, and fully transparent, a lot of our plans for what we wanted to do this season were a little bit in flux because of the tariff situations, and not just with China, but all the other places that we did business with. So there was the times that we would be normally placing our factory orders, we were in a holding pattern for months until we could figure out, what our lives are going to be like. So hopefully now that things are, more clear, our factories will be able to allow, hopefully we have enough time to bring that jacket back this season. And I wanted to do it for that legacy game. So fingers crossed that, we can do that.
The Giants' 100th anniversary uniforms, speaking of fashion, they were supposed to wear them for multiple games. They wore it for the one. It was not, I would say by a large portion of the fan base, it was not well received as a legacy uniform. But then you see the new Pittsburgh Steelers ones that they just put out, and I was kind of shaking my head when I saw those. Did you have a problem with the legacy uniform? I just didn't like the pants. I thought they should have went with the dark.
Yeah, the tan pants were weird.
And he's been weird as a guy.
Thank you for your honesty, brother.
They were weird. They kind of matched the leather helmets from that period. But I thought the legacy uniforms, when you took it in a bit, they were digestible. And again, they didn't look like the bumblebee from the first vintage Pittsburgh Steelers. I thought they were decent. It just, for me, any opportunity, and I'm in my business hat, another opportunity to create an opportunity for fans is a good thing. The pants just didn't do it any favors.
No, it didn't.
No, I gotta get this quick question. Carl, have you seen anything with Bobby Okereke practice that indicates he will be successful in the Bowen system this year?
Both he and Micah McFadden have been relatively quiet as it relates to the noise that Burns, Thibodeau, and Carter are making. But that doesn't mean that they're not doing their jobs. They'll be fine in Bowen's system as long as the front line is good. They're not big linebackers, right? And they're running hit guys. Bobby Okereke is probably system neutral or system agnostic. He can play in any system. So I think he's going to be good. He's a volume tackler. He'll be fine. I like to see a little more activity, but like I said, the other guys are making so much noise. It's not like they're not doing their job. We just haven't seen it, or heard it on the clips that we see posted on social media. But when you look at the film, they're where they're supposed to be. And because they can't tackle in practice, we don't know, if they're making the play or not, but they're standing where they're supposed to be.
It's about tackling. Paulson Dable, 54 million, 36 guaranteed, was a lockdown guy with the Saints until the break of his leg. Banks had an off season last year. I think a little bit had to do not only with the fact that he maybe, I'm not going to say was full of himself because I don't know him, but I also think it was some of the safety play that caused his downfall a little bit last year. But another lockdown corner guy, another man-to-man guy. You have these two guys on the edges that they play this style, and you kind of have Shane Bowen coming in from last year going into year 2 with the Tennessee bend not break defense, which we've seen. I followed Tennessee for years because I'm a Malik Willis fan. So when he went over to the Titans, I became a Tennessee Titan fan a little bit. And we've talked about this on the show before. With Bowen as the coordinator, he seemed to adjust a little bit from what he used to do with Tennessee, but some of the players that he has now in the stable, I'm not going to say doesn't fit what he does in the secondary, but is different than what he used to do outside of maybe the 2 years he had Jim Schwartz as the mentor in Tennessee. Do you see that Banks maybe taking a step back had to be because we talked about it, we talked about a Parcels guy because he was the wink guy. He was in this attacking style defense where he kind of had to play. Now he's got to play a little differently. And now you bring in Paulson Dable, who is proficient at, playing on the ball, man-to-man guy, kind of going into a different system. Do you think that Bowen's going to kind of alternate or change what he's doing to his talent, or do you see so far going into year 2, he's he's not going to be rigidly and unflexible, but it might be a little bit more of what we saw in Tennessee?
No, I think he's going to be up to the task. I think here's two things that you have to understand. So Jim Schwartz is a very aggressive, style guy. He's, almost wink, a little different. But also the head coach is Mike Vrabel, who grew up in the Bill Belichick system where you adapt and you change. You're not the same defense that you were the year before. And that's based on personnel, based on what the league is doing, based on what your division is doing. That was our first meeting with, in minicamp was, here's the type of team we're going to be. I'm assuming if Shane Bowen hasn't articulated that to his personnel, he has had to articulate that to his staff and to Joe Shane and say, okay, you gave me this. This is what we're going to do with it. This is the type of team we're going to be. Because when Joe Shane went and got a Debo, I'm sure he said to Shane Bowen, hey, I'm about to go get this guy. Can you make this work? He's a man-to-man cover guy. And so Shane Bowen would have to articulate, yes, this is the type of team we're going to be this year. We couldn't be that team last year because of X, Y, and Z. One of the things also I like about the changes that Shane Bowen has made, and this is not a knock on Jerome Henderson because he's a good coach and He has a different style, right? And I don't think they connected with Banks. They got Jeff Burris and Marquand Manuel in that defensive backfield, and they coach every single rep. If you see Marquand Manuel, he's soaking wet after every practice. He's running down, he's teaching. There's a clip on Twitter now where Trey Hawkins got beat. And by the time Trey Hawkins got off the ground, there was Marquand Manuel right there, teaching him what was going on. They're very, very engaged. This is a different type of defensive backfield coaching staff. And I like that. So that indicates to me that Shane Bowen is saying to everyone, we're a different type. Our personnel says we can be different this year defensively. And if that doesn't change, I would be very disappointed. And I had my issues with him last year when they just couldn't stop the same run over and over again. But, from what I'm seeing in practice and the way the players are moving in different areas, I would say, yeah, they'll be a different team this year, schematically.
I have two more questions, right? But I gotta get to the Tuto. We love and respect two big bosses, Tim and James, the New York Giants legend, Carl, all diehard fans from across the ponds, greeting from the entire rugby team in Italy. Tuto, welcome as always, and all super chats and all financial restitute from this channel, of course, goes to the Philadelphia Children's Hospital. So, of course, thank you for the super chat. Carl, a couple of years back, you were calling the game. And I'll never forget it because I came inside to get something to eat, and there was a play that happened, and you said, and to me it was such a visceral moment because you literally said the Giants are officially broken, and I don't know if you remember that game, and it just seemed like just such in that moment that you were not just a Giant commentator, but you were not just a Giant legend, not just a Giant great, but you it was like that you spoke for everyone, all Giant fans that weren't not just in the stadium but watching that game. When you said that, did you know what you were saying, or did it just kind of come out like like when you say, like when my wife says you shouldn't have said that? Well, I wasn't thinking at the time when I said it, or was it just something that just
the one thing about me, I'm very intentional about what I say, and I meant it, right? And I don't know, someone said to me that I tried to backtrack. I didn't backtrack. They were broken. It was as bad as I had seen it, and I didn't take any of that back, and no one asked me to take it back, because if you're John Marison in a box, 3 booths away from me, and he's listening to broadcast, he probably was thinking the same thing. My team is broken. This is as worse as I've seen it.
We appreciate you for that honesty too, brother.
I was gonna say we appreciate. Like I said, I just will never forget that moment because I never would have heard it if I didn't walk back in. And it was just one of those things that as a Giant fan, that's something that I'm gonna remember. At the end of the day, we're going in the 2025 season. What are your, I don't want to say expectations, but what do you want to see out of this 2025 team? Because the scheduling gods did not do us any favors. It was the luck of the draw because of where we played divisionally and how, the outside division game. So it's not like, fans are always sitting there like, well, the NFL's against us. No, it's just, it's rotational. This is what happens. But what are you looking for out of this 2025 team? That doesn't have not wins and losses, but just
I can tell you, I can give you 2 areas where I'm going to be with high expectations. Offensive explosive plays, and whether or not this defense can earn the right to rush on 3rd down. I would be so disappointed with all of the hype around these 4 Fantastic Four, and they're giving them all these names, if they could never get to a place where they can really dominate a phase of the game where they can really get to the pass rush. So those are two areas I want to see. Explosive plays with Russell Wilson, and whether or not this team can earn the right to rush the passer. That means they got to stop the run.
Amen.
So
were you ever upset?
that's all I got for the day.
Were you ever upset that you didn't, that the 81 team had the crunch bunch? You ever upset that the 86 team didn't have like a cool defensive name?
Big Blue Wrecking Crew.
I know, but I like the crunch bunch better.
Okay. It's all good. Kelly Van Pelt, Carson and Taylor. Why not? You know?
James, you have
I liked it too.
You got any last? Well, I got the picture behind me. I got the autographed picture of the Crunch Bunch. James, you got any last questions for Carl before we let him go?
Just appreciate you coming on, brother. You told so many great stories and gave so much great insight. But I gotta ask, did you guys have a particular hate for Washington? Because I feel like a lot of your stories today in the general are centered around Washington, how you guys just terrorize those dudes.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's a particular hate. I think we respected each other. Yeah, we hated them. But here's the reason why. If you extract 1 year out of the 1980s, the Super Bowl ran through New York, Washington, or San Francisco.
True.
These are the three teams that had the most Super Bowls in the 80s, and the 86 Bears got one. But so yeah, I mean, it was a competition because we were the best in football. You know, in the conference, it was Washington, New York, and San Francisco, and it was San Francisco and Washington before it was New York, and we had to break the door down to get in that conversation. And once we did, we weren't leaving.
No, sir.
We at the end of every show, Carl, we have the guest give one final thought, and it doesn't have to be football related. It could be literally anything. It's just something to put out there for everyone to get through the rest of their Sunday, to get go into their work week. So we always say, Carl Banks, final thought. Like I said, it doesn't have to be football related. It could be life related. Could be anything.
My final thoughts, I guess today's thought would be live life on life's terms. Don't stress the small stuff.
I like that. I like that a lot. Of course, we had Carl Banks on for the last 2 hours, also on the Believe Network and Believe in Giants. So make sure you go over there and follow Carl and Bob Papa as well. Carl, I really do appreciate you coming on and spending as much time as you did. If you can hang out for one second, I'm going to end the stream. I just want to say thank you in person before we leave. So if you can just hang on for 1 second. I want to thank everyone for coming on. As always, we're going to be back out at camp doing everything. James and I will be at the Buffalo game. So make sure we're going to have a lot of content from that. So from Tim, from Carl Banks and James Williams, again, guys, we appreciate you. Let's see.